Aha. All right. Now I can do it. Okay. So now I've set myself as the meeting moderator, and I'm going to just kind of go through some examples of how I might you go about doing a content analysis paper. Let me first of all say, if your organization is small and you need to find another of the same organization, um, you might use that, right? It might be okay to do that. The one example would be like a franchise, right? And so if you did a local franchise restaurant, like a local Burger King, for example, and you couldn't find anything on the local Burger King, it would be okay to do national Burger King too. It's part of the same organization, and so it's only okay to do this if it's part of the same organization, right? And so if you've got a local affiliate of the Girl Scouts, it would be okay to do national affiliates of the Girl Scouts. Okay, so that does bring things out a little bit. If needed, you can do that, but it needs to be the same organization. Um, and so the same big picture organization, even though it's a different location, right? And so anyway, I'm gonna look at trying to just collect as much as I can in a short period of time. My organization, I think we've talked about it before, is that I want to look at the American Indian movement, and so one of the first things I'm going to do is just get on the internet and um, start looking in some news sources for the American Indian movement. But certainly you can do like Google News, right? And so I can just do this. But think about how inefficient this is. I can look up things on individual websites, and certainly they have their own website, and we'll get to that in a moment. But first, I want to kind of look at news before we look at individual websites. And so Google News, right? I mean, you just type it into Google, and then click on News, and then you can go to each individual site uh, from there, and you can just highlight and right click and copy, or you can use the end capture, right? And you can see here the end capture. Once I've gone to that page, it will download the web page or the article as a PDF. I generally, just would kind of click both and see what looks better. In this particular case, the article looks better. It has none of the extra junk on the side. And none of that matters to me, really. I don't want to see all the ads and everything. So I'm just going to choose article as PDF and then click capture. It might be just as easy for you to highlight and copy and paste. But it does basically the same thing, right? If you highlight, copy, and paste, then you just have to import that right into NVivo. Otherwise, we're using end capture. So this is one way to look at news, is to just go to Google News and start finding sources this way. And let me pull up a couple more. This one's a pretty interesting story on Thanksgiving protest that occurs on Alcatraz every year. So I like that one. But I'm going to show you. Capture that, and I want to show you the much more efficient way to go about doing this, where you're going to be able to get a lot more sources in a much quicker fashion. Let's just go to Madden Library. Oops. Boy, I'm having time there. And we'll just go right to research. And then I want to look at databases. And then I want to look for ProQuest. Yeah, ProQuest newspapers, right? I guess there's different ProQuest, but we want this U.S. newspapers. It's got over 1,800 U.S. and international newspapers. Maybe it's not the only one that does news. There's another one that does a pretty good job, but this is one of the good sources. If you're not on campus, you'll need to sign in. And here again, this is, if you've got a local organization, you might not find, a lot of information online in this news database. You might have to look for the larger organization. And that can also be done, by just using quotes. Over here on Google News, you can think about this, right? I can look up American Indian Movement Fresno, and we're not likely to find hardly anything here. Not too bad. There's a couple of things, but most of it is not really anything that happened in Fresno. It's just kind of covering American Indian Movement news. But if I did something like Denver, right, I would see a very different story. The American Indian Movement is very, very active in Denver. It's where I did my research, and you'll see here lots of stuff from 2018 and forward. So again, it would be okay to reach out. If I was doing American Indian Movement in Fresno, it would be okay for me to look at content from American Indian Movement Denver. But it's really not a very efficient way to do things through Google News. And what we really want to do is to use something like ProQuest, and we can type in the name of our larger group here, and we want to look at the full text of the document. So this will pull up anytime it's in the full text. And if it turns out that's too many, I can change it to pulling it up in the title. But the full text is the place to start. And then maybe not all dates, right? Maybe we just, take the last 3 years just to start with. There's going to be a lot. So for your organization, maybe you do all dates if it's a small group. But and then you want to click full text, and then we want to do our search. Yeah, so here's a question. Do different newspaper articles count as separate articles, or all news counts as one source? They all count as separate, right? So, technically, you just need 30 different news articles, right? That would be one way to accomplish this. I don't necessarily think that's the best choice, but I did not specify the combination. I just said 30 sources, so any combination of social media, online sources, web pages, blogs, news sources, and every news source counts as a different source. Okay, so for here, I just did the last 3 years, and look at this. I have 481 hits. This is all American Indian Movement. It's too much, really, and I really be better off focusing in by typing in something like Denver or even a particular cause. Like for me, I'm much more interested in like Columbus and their protest of Columbus Day, and so I could do something like this. And to even further specify, because 481 results is way too much, right? I'm never going to code all that. Even with automatic coding, it still serves limited utility. So anyway, here we go. 21 results in the last 3 years on Columbus Day from the American Indian Movement. Much more doable. And here I have that's all full text, and I can download it all. I believe I can get all of them. If I click on save here, and then I I think I'm going to try text only is what worked best before. Oh, I have to select my items first. So I select all 21 of my items, and then I hit save, and then I'll do the text only. I believe this is going to give me the full text. I may need to change. Yeah, so here it is, full text. That's right. Okay, so, and then I can do the citations at the end. No, I don't want to do that because then it's going to code those, so I don't really need that. include none of that. Okay, so I'm just going to click continue here. And then I've got 20 of my 30 sources right there, right? And I haven't even looked at lots of other things. So I'm going to keep rolling because I know that having just 20 sources or even just 30 oftentimes is not going to be enough for a great paper. But you can see here, this is a thing that was downloaded, all 20 of those sources all in one shot, right? And you saw it could be 481. It wouldn't have taken any longer to download 481 sources as it did to download 23. So there you go. That's how I would do news. That's just one of our sources. The other things that I'd look at would be things like Twitter. And I think we already did this once, so this will go really quickly. You're gonna in Twitter, you have to do a search for the larger group, and then you're going to just come up here and do the NCapture. And if you're not seeing as a database, then you need to click a little bit more until you have the ability to open as a database, because this is okay, right? As you'll be able to see what's on this page, but you're not going to get all of the tweets and all of the comments back. And so what we really need to do is to click around until we get into a better page that allows us to download more. And I see I have a question here. Let me see what's going on. Chat question. Okay, so yeah, if you're having trouble with NCapture, it might be because the icon is not up at the top, in which case you have to come over here to these dots and then go to more tools and then extensions. And then you have to turn on this NCapture by just clicking this blue button here. You'll notice that that's off and the icon has gone up at the top, and then you click it and it turns back on again. Is that the problem that you were having with NCapture? Well, it might be. I'll just keep moving along, and then again, I'm trying to find a good page that'll allow me to use NCapture to get the full data sets. Aha! See, there it is. Now I've got the page that I'm looking for. This tweets as the data set icon pops up, and I'm just going to make sure that's clicked, and then I'm going to click capture. And then I have to authorize that app. Okay, I'm going to open this up in Vivo and make sure it came through okay. Looked kind of weird. So if you remember, this is what we're going to do. What I'm doing now is importing some of those NCaptures. Oh, there it is. Okay, so there's the progress page. Didn't know where that was. All right, so 1,617 tweets captured, told me right there. But I've already opened up in Vivo here and started talking about it. So let me pull in some of those things that I've already looked at. As always, right, we're going to click on data and then documents. We're going to pull up documents that we've downloaded. So, for example, that ProQuest, right? That ProQuest output with those 30 or 23 or whatever it was documents in there that I cut down from 400. That's all in one file right here. It's just a text file. So I'm just going to open and import it just like any other document, and that's in there now. And then the other import is from NCapture, and I'm just going to again click data from other sources and then from NCapture, and then you can see here a couple of different pages. pages that I opened up. If you remember, I did NCapture on just web pages, right? And again, you can do that, right? You can instead of copy and pasting, you can use NCapture just on a regular web page. But we also have the Twitter search here. And you see this one I did before was on Black Lives Matter. It's there. So you got to be careful that the old ones don't show up as well. You see the dates here as well. So I'm going to uncheck the one from November 26th and just use the ones from today and then click import. And this is going to give me my a couple of web pages and my 20-some newspaper articles plus those Twitter searches. Clearly, I'm way over 30 by now, I think, but or at least I'm close, I guess. If I've got my 23 here, and then 24, 25, and then 26. So I actually need at least 4 more. And this is not going to be really challenging. Let me do YouTube. And I'll just type in American Indian Movement. And here, let's see. We have Russell Means. $1973. Wow. I've never watched this before. Pretty interesting. But what's interesting, of course, to us is the comments. If it doesn't have comments, it's not useful. And this one only has 5. I'm not even going to bother with that. I need something with much more, many more comments. Yeah, only 2 on that one. We need something better here.
It's here somewhere. There you go. All right.
Well,
okay. Tell me why my friend.
Only 6 here, but I'm going to go ahead and do it just for display purposes here. Another NCapture, and I want to click here, video and comments, and then just capture that.
He just had February 24th. He been with this other girl since March. She didn't know nothing about his life, which is.
Okay, so and from there I can go back into NVivo and import that, but I'm gonna just go back to Google and look at some more sites straight off of Google and just use. Okay, so here's another question. I'm going to use Google and find some more sources, but I have a question here. Does a hiring flyer count? Does event flyers count as one source? So a hiring flyer, yes. If you want to use that, that's fine. In fact, a hiring flyer is almost like a controlling document, right? It's like part of these images that shape our organizations. But anyway, event flyers, right? Every different event, right, would be a different document, right? But obviously multiple flyers of the same thing, or small variations that say basically the same thing. Those count as one, right? And just because you've changed a couple words or something doesn't mean it's a different source. But for different events, right? You make a different flyer for every event, right? Each flyer would be a different source. Okay, so I'm gonna come over to Google and find do some more sources. And in order to make this quick, I'm just going to use NCapture, and I'm going to capture these right into NVivo. I know there's some pretty good sources here. Now there's a lot of other things you can do. You can do Facebook as well. But I don't have a login for Facebook at the moment, and I don't think it will let me. I'll try it in a moment. We'll see. But I actually lied to Facebook about my age, and they got so mad and banned me because that's how they make their money. They make their money off of marketing you based on your age. And if you lie about your age, they can't do their job. They're not gonna be able to make money off of you, and they banned me for it. So anyway, ooh, this is good. Now, one other thing, instead of just being, sort of, haphazard about choosing articles, choosing articles here that are really, informative, right? And so things like, this particular article looking at, the history of the American Indian movement, you get in the sort of the same thing that I had on another site that I've already downloaded. These are important, right? They give you a sense of what the organization is about. And another thing to look for is archives. Now, your organization may not have archives, but a lot do. And this is like right here. This not really sure why it's called Dick Shovel, but it's called Dick Shovel. And it's really it's a great archive of information about the American Indian movement and just all kinds of great stuff. Here you see email campaigns and interviews, and so here you go. Wow, I just found this, right? I have interviews that other people have done, right? These are documents too, and now I can click and capture. I can capture these interviews that basically interview transcripts and include those. Let me do Dino Butler, right? This guy was charged with murder of FBI agents, as were quite a few people of the American Indian movement. They're defined as enemies of the state and terrorists. Russell Means, another big leader, he became famous, was in quite a few different movies, Dances with Wolves, and several Disney movies, actually, if you could believe that. And so anyway, all right, I think I'm probably, at least at 30 now, and it'd be obviously really easy for me to find a ton more. Boy, this one's John Trudell. I just can't stop, right? I could just keep going forever. Look at this anime archive, a whole archive of information here. Just so much stuff. Just all of these interviews. Oh my gosh. And this is Anime Aquash was somebody who was, well, we're not sure, but she was murdered most likely, and perhaps murdered by a member of the movement, and she was a member of the movement, and because they thought she was an FBI informant, right? We're not really sure about all of this, but anyway, lots of great information here. Like this one on the potential jury pool, really interesting. The American Indian movement releases press releases. This is a press statement, right? And so, a lot of organizations have a whole archives of press releases, and you ought to be able to find that kind of stuff. If it's not online, you might ask members of your organization. Okay, so I'm going to go back into NVivo and import. I think I've done enough data collection here, so I'm going to import some more stuff. Okay, and here you can see that choice, all captures not previously imported, allows you to easily not import the same ones, except the old ones. For some reason, this Black Lives Matter still shows up every time. But these are all the new ones, and now I've got enough, and I could do more, but for purposes of instruction here, we'll stop there. And I'll pause here for any questions. It says my screen sharing is paused. Have you been able to see what I've been doing? Okay, well, either way, I am going to continue, and I am going to start doing some analysis here. And certainly I can do, go through individually hand coding of my individual sources here. Okay. But before I do that, I'm going to do some queries. I want to do, first I'm going to do a word frequency query, and I'm going to do stemmed words, and then I'm going to run that query. All right, and so we have some pretty interesting responses here. Wow, Hanukkah, really high. How interesting is that? Okay, so I'm going to run this text search query on Hanukkah because I just find that to be a really odd thing. And here, what I want to do is create a new node and do the broad context. And I'm going to run that query. And this is part of identity. This is part of who we are and who our enemies are, who our allies and who our antagonists are. And so anytime they're talking about culture or ethnicity or other groups, right, this is part of framing. This is the identity part of framing. And we'd also be looking for issues of injustice, of issues of agency, right? Injustice, identity, and agency, the three main collective action frames. And then there's other collective action frames: diagnosis, prognosis, solution. Those are also another way to think about those collective action frames. Okay, so screen sharing is paused. All right, resume share. All right. Now, all right, that better? Paused. What's going on here? So let me try. Maybe if I share the in vivo directly, that will probably be better. Yes, because I was sharing my screen in general. Now this will work better, I think. Okay, so I have my word frequency, right? And I found Hanukkah. I found, and I look from these. It looks like they're going to be right next to each other, so they're basically going to be the same. I'm going to go ahead and leave Jewish out and just use Hanukkah. Let's see. Injustice, agency, right? Identity, indigenous, right? This is an identity issue, right? And so we can take this word indigenous. We don't want to create a node here because when it does that, it only pulls up a couple words around it, right? And so you don't have a large enough quote to actually use if you create the node directly. So what you need to do is run the text search query from here, like I was doing before. It automatically fills in the word indigenous or whatever word you chose, and then you want to do spread to broad. You can play with the spread and see what works for you, but usually for me, broad works fine. And then I run. Wait. Yeah, and then I'm going to run that query. So this particular query, I can add to my project, this text search query. Let's see, which this one was the Twitter, or this one was Hanukkah. And then I can save the results here. What I really want to do is to create these results as a new node. And I want to save the results actually in my nodes. And so I'm going to click OK under nodes here. What I did is I hit this button, save results, and then I want to save the results in my nodes as a new node. And I'm going to call this Hanukkah. Click OK. All right, so now it's in my nodes under Hanukkah. It looks like this is popped up again and again and again. This is the same thing. So that really wasn't a very useful term, because it was really just the same sentence. What a bummer. Okay, so the other one, what was the other one I did? Well, we'll keep working here. I must have deleted it. Yeah, I must have. All right, so indigenous was the other one. Right, and so let me run a text search query again on indigenous, and then save those results into my nodes. This might be slightly different for you if you're using 12. This is 11, in vivo 11. And it's indigenous. And this is searching all the sources, right? So in a sense, I'm coding all the sources all at once. And you can see here, right, the perhaps not even enough, right, in terms of the length, right? We can't really, we don't have enough information there, really. And so what I really should probably do is come back to this again and perhaps do indigenous again, run that text search query. But make the spread. I'm not sure if I did broad. I'm going to try broad again, because I think I may not have even done broad that time. Run that query. And let me just glance at it here. Yeah, that's probably going to be better. Okay, and then I'm going to save that, change my results to nodes, click OK, and call this indigenous. Much better, right? You see here how I did that. Once I change it to broad, I have much better quotes, much longer quotes, where I can actually see what they're talking about. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just delete, right-click on the first one in my nodes and delete it. Sure I want to delete it? Yes, I am. Okay, so here we are. All right, police. Clearly, this is an injustice issue, right? Because I know about the group, I know they fight with the police all the time, right? And so the police are a definite injustice issue. Anytime it's talked about, it's going to be injustice. So I'm going to do a search on injustice, and I'm going to do a run text search query. Police, or on police, not injustice, but it's going to be the injustice frame, I can tell you. And here I'm going to change the spread to broad. I'm going to run that query again, and then I'm going to save the results and make sure it's in my nodes. Click OK, call it police. All right, so just let's stop and take stock of where we are here, right? I have Hanukkah and indigenous and police, right? And these are going to be framing. I'm going to create a new node here called injustice frames. And I'm going to just I'm left clicking on police, and I'm holding down my left click and then just dragging it to injustice frames. And now you can see it, injustice frame police is underneath there. I'm going to do the same thing with identity. I'm going to create a new node called identity frames. And then I'm going to do the same thing, except this time I'll just do a cut and paste, just to show you that you can do it both ways. Right click cut, right click paste. All right, and now you see Hanukkah's under there, and you could do the same thing with indigenous. Right click cut, right click paste. Okay, so here we are. Now I have identity and injustice frames. I've got two of my good nodes. And you can, like I said before, you can have an emergent node, call it whatever you want. So you really only need 4 concept nodes. I have 2 already, and I've only been coding for, for a few minutes. Okay, so I'm going to go on here. Issues, probably issues are injustice, and because in the way that they talk about things, these are problems. What are the problems? What are the issues? So I'm going to right click on this. I'm going to run my text search query, and I'm going to spread to broad, and you see here issue or issued or issues. Now this might be a little, in fact, I'm going to take out issued. I don't like the way that that's going to pull up what I'm not looking for. I'm looking for injustice. And when issued means something was issued, that's not really injustice. It means something was given. But something that's an issue or an issues, that's an injustice. And so I'm going to change that to broad. I'm going to run that query. Again, save those results. I'm going to select, click choose nodes. And in fact, from here, now that I've created injustice, and I know that this is going to be an injustice, I can just click that, and it will automatically put it under injustice frames, and click OK, and click OK there. Whoops, I have to call this, what am I calling this? Issues. Okay. All right, and then you see it pops right up here. Now I have 2 sub nodes under injustice frames, and 2 sub nodes under identity frames. Right, and they're really not sub nodes. I mean, unless you have a ton of data, right? Like, you think Hanukkah's got a ton of data with 241, but it's the same sentence 241 times, however the hell that happened. But really here, what these are just sort of different quotes, right? And in particular, right, as you start narrowing down, some of this won't be as useful, right? You click on issues, some of it won't be very useful to talk about injustice frames. But as we move along, it'll become clearer and clearer that this is something that you can do pretty quickly, at least in the first round. And after that, then maybe you go back and do some more defined quotes. Here's another injustice frame: incident. Right, incidents are always injustices according to this group. This is just the way that they discuss things. So broad context, run that query, save those results, select. I'm going to click injustice again. Click OK. Oops. So here is an incident. So I need agency, right? The injustice frame is the same as diagnosis, really. So I need an agency that's like empowerment, and then there's also sort of prognosis frame, what they call prognosis frames, which is solutions. So I can find some agency and some solution frames would be really helpful. It might be hard with single words, right? You might really need to actually go in there and actually start reading some of the sources. All right, this is an agency frame talking about founders, right? Talking about your history and your that you have a history, right? Putting things into context, and you're talking about your founders is an agency issue. It gives people a sense of belonging and empowerment. And so I'm going to run that text search query on founders. And here I'm going to change this to broad. I'm going to run that query again. I'm going to save those results, change that to nodes. And because this is going to be an agency, I'm not going to put it under anything yet. We'll just call this leader or founder. This is the way to do it. And from over here, I'm going to create a new node, call this an agency frame, and then just left click and drag. And now founder, oops, left click and drag. And now founder is under agency frame. Okay, and now that I'm at it, I can choose my other founders, right? I know who they are. Actually, we passed one up. Bellacourt is one. He's one of the founders, and so we can run that text search query, and spread that to broad, and run that query again, and save those results. Right, all this is so repetitive, right? Nodes. And in here, this is our agency frame. Okay, so we can put it right under that and click OK and click OK. Oops. This is what am I doing here? Bellacourt. And her first name is Clyde, but there's no point in really doing that, because probably every time they mention Clyde, they mention Bellacourt. Okay, so let's moving along. Organizers, another agency frame. And so I can run this text search query, and I can change the spread to broad and run that query and save those results. Change that to nodes. All right, so I think I've pretty much got, I probably have enough to kind of display what I mean to do. I can certainly continue to do this coding, and I don't mean to suggest that that you shouldn't do the hand coding. That you shouldn't go through each one of your sources and read them and code through the sources. That's the standard way of doing coding. But I do want to show you how easy this can be to kind of build up the structure, at least for your analysis. And if you need to do something quick and dirty, then you can do it, right? I mean, look at what I've just done, and all of this. I collected all the data. I've got 3 different frames here. With each one of them have several different subtopics underneath them, 3 different nodes. And certainly I could come up with a couple more without too much trouble. And maybe I should do that while we're at it, before we move on to turning it into a paper. So I have agency, identity, and injustice. I need some sort of prognosis. I need some sort of solution, because agency and because injustice and diagnosis go together. The prognosis is what's left out. The motivation and agency go together. So if I could find out something else on motivation, I could put that under agency. Like spiritual, right? Now, this is hard to know for sure where to put this. Is this identity or is this agency? I actually think spiritual is part of the identity of the group, because I know the group. They call themselves a spiritual group. So this, you might have trouble knowing that if you didn't know the group, but this is clearly an issue of identity. And so I'm going to put it under identity. And then I'm going to stop adding things to the existing nodes and try to find some new nodes here in just a second. Run that query, save those results, select. I'm going to put this under identity frames and call it spiritual. Click OK. Okay, so here we are. And you notice I've got all these tabs here, and I'm just going to click way over on the buttons here. It'll allow me to look at that. All right, so I need I need some solution, and I need a motivation. Solutions and motivations. Governments is identity, right? And so I would run this, and I would put it under identity frames. Prison, injustice. Arrest, injustice. Understanding, right? Now, this is hard to know for sure, right? But probably, right, this is going to be something of prognosis. Now, I don't know yet because I haven't read it. So, maybe I should wait, right, before I, jump in and call that a prognosis. But that's generally, what they're shooting for, and independence. So I'm going to do both of those temporarily as nodes, and I'm going to run that text search query on understanding. Yes, that's basically what these could be injustices, though, right? Like people don't understand, or we don't get understanding, and so it might not be the solution. It might be the complaint about the problem. I don't know without actually reading it. But I'm going to go ahead and save it temporarily as a prognosis, and so I'm just going to call it nodes and understanding. And over here in nodes, I'm going to create a new node and call this prognosis frames. And then just left click and drag understanding under prognosis frames. And then I'm going to do one more prognosis, and that is independence. I'll glance through. Maybe I can find one more after this, but I'd like to have 3 subs underneath each one and give me my good quotes, right? One good quote for each one. One quote on incident, one quote on issues, one quote on police, right? One quote on Hanukkah, one quote on indigenous, one quote on spiritual, one quote on Bellicourt, one quote on founder, one quote on organization, right? And so if I have 3 quotes under each one, I would be, basically almost done with my analysis if all of it worked out kind of like I planned. So let's independence, and I'm going to add something here just because I know this group, and it's maybe I shouldn't do that. I'm going to leave that. I'll come back. I'll find it. Sovereignty I'll find, and I'll add it in a second. So we'll just leave this independence, turn it to broad, run that query, save those results, independence. Change the select to nodes, put that in my prognosis frame, click OK. Oh, I'm running out of battery. Click OK. I better go plug in. Okay, so plugged in. All right. My prognosis frames here, independence and understanding. Now I want to look for one more maybe. Let me set just a second. Okay. Well, I don't even see it. Maybe I passed it up, but this will give me a chance to just do a straight text search. So I went up to query and just clicked on text search. And I'm going to just look for sovereignty. Did I spell that wrong? Yeah, there we go. So here we have the sovereignty issue, and American Indians want to have control over their own future. Self-determination would be another term to use. I need to change the spread here to broad, and then rerun it, and then save that results and call it sovereignty. change that to our prognosis frames, click OK, click OK. All right, now, okay, so you can see how my paper is going to lay out. I'm not going to take the time to look through each one of these quotes and make sure that they all fit or whatever. You know, that's certainly something that you have to do, and keep coding and choose the best quotes under each one of your nodes. But you have 4 here, and then, you know, your 5th one, you know, if I was to continue, I would just do something that was kind of emergent. You know, I might do, you know, something based on, you know, a word or an idea that came up, or something specific like crime or injury, right? Like this particular one where you could connect fight and injuring, and right. I mean, these would probably fit under injustice, but then again, right, you could create a new node if there's a ton of different things. And so anyway, you can see how this is going to lay out for each one of these. I'm going to just sort of export into Word. And so, all right, certainly you could just click on each one, right, and then highlight it and copy, which is what we often do. But also, right, you can right click and you can export this, and you can export the node. And you'll see here it's called Bellecourt, but we want to have it a reference view, and it's going to save it as a doc file. And I'm just going to click on open on export. I don't really need any of this other stuff here, but you do need the reference view for this really to work. So look how this comes up. Okay, so there's everything, and this is and it's called Bellecourt, right? That's the name of the file, is Bellecourt. I don't know if you can see that or not, but anyway, it's a Word file. It's called Bellecourt, and so I can do the same thing for all the other ones. And that's basically what I'm going to do, is I'm going to export each one of these nodes. I'm going to click on Reference View, and I don't need to open each one. Just click on OK. And then basically it's just a matter of, from there, it's just a matter of finding a good quote for each one of these, right? Because you only need one quote from each one of these, right? One quote from Bellecourt, one quote from founder, one quote from organization, right? That kind of thing. All right. So getting near the end here, and I don't know if there's much point in sort of explaining, you know, how to incorporate all of this, other than to say that, you know, once you have it all in Word files, then you're going to basically you know, you're gonna put your own words in between each quote. You're gonna put it in the analysis section, so use headings, add the methods, add the introduction, right, things like that. But basically, I've shown you, you know, how you can quickly, in about an hour, you can download a ton of data, and you can import that into NVivo, and that you can do some sort of very basic coding with the auto coding feature. You can export that into Word, and then you have a very, very, very basic analysis, the core of the very basic analysis paper. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is the perfect method. It's probably the quick and dirty method, but it is a quick and dirty method, and I think it gives us something important. Gives us a lot of data. It gives us a very basic analysis. Certainly, you could do better, but you know, if you're in a hurry and you want to get the structure down in a hurry, this is the way to do it. And then you can go back and do the sort of more in-depth hand coding and reading and culling and finding those perfect quotes. But the structure of it done in an hour. So I'm going to stop. Any questions? Okay, so some questions. If we have photos of some documents, how do we incorporate those into NVivo? Okay, so let me show you how that works. In just a second. Let me, before I get to that, another question. We're not using the same nodes from our last papers. I would suggest probably not. You can, it's open. Any of the concepts we've covered this semester are acceptable, but it's the concepts that are made for content analysis that you really should focus on. Because that's what they're made for. It's going to work so much better because these concepts are made to understand rhetoric. And so you saw how easy it was for me to just look through those documents that I just downloaded and find the injustice frames and find the identity frames and find it all, because that's what these concepts are made for. And so again, it's these concepts that you probably want to focus on. I do in the instructions and course document, it says these are the acceptable ones. And I said this in class, I meant it to say most acceptable. So you can use some of the other concepts, but these are the ones I strongly encourage you to use because it'll work better. It'll be easier. It'll look better. It'll be stronger. It'll just be better. So yes, you can use other concepts. You can use the same ones from the last papers. And, you know, if you can find a way to use one or so from the last paper, that's great. Or maybe even more than that, that might be okay. But again, think about these particular ones as the best. Okay, so the other question was incorporating photos. Okay, so you certainly can incorporate photos. They don't count. A photo doesn't by itself doesn't count as a document, whether you took it or somebody else took it. Doesn't count as one of the 30, but certainly you can use it. You can bring it into NVivo, and you can use it in your paper. Let me show you how to go about doing that. I'm going to share my screen here, and where's my NVivo AIM content analysis? Let me. Okay, so we're going to go to data, and here we're going to click on pictures, and it will just pull up your hard drive. I'm not sure if you can see mine pulled up, but it will pull up your hard drive, and then it'll ask you to upload a picture, right? Like, so I'm just going to choose a picture off of my hard drive and click OK. And then you can see this, I think, and then you just click OK on the import. And so from here you have a source. It should be here. Right, so here's, I think this is the image. Now you can't see it very well here, but with an image, you can actually code images. We hadn't really talked about this too much, but you can code images. Like this particular one, right? Is you know, if I left click and drag over the image, you see how I put a box around it. Then I can right click. And I can click code selection, and I can code selection at a new node, and I can call this, like, for example, Trump is weak, right? Would just be nice. Just call it weak. And so it shows up in your nodes over here, right? You can see here under Trump weak in my nodes. If I click on that, you get that summary, which is meaningless, or that reference, which is meaningless, but the picture actually shows up here. And right, this part is highlighted. This is the full source, and this is the part that you highlighted as the node. And so I don't know how useful it is to actually code pictures, but you can do that if you like. That's fine. You can code pictures. You can code video. A lot of times, the most useful way to do this is to I was trying to do notes. It won't let me do a note. Huh. That's interesting. Okay. So if you do, that's it. Okay. So once you double click on the source, it will pop up just like this. And you can add language right here in the content. So this is what you're actually looking for, is the words, right? So this, you're going to say something like, Trump is shown as not able to clear the most basic hurdles of human interaction, right? Something like that, right? And so then, right, you actually have some content tied to this picture. But I would say for most of you, right, none of this is going to be all that important. Most likely you're not going to use a bunch of pictures and code them in NVivo and anything like that. You could just import them into your paper anywhere you want for support. Excuse me. Okay, so any other questions? Okay, so well, I'm going to stop the recording because I was able to, I think, sort of display how to do the content analysis paper, and I did it in about an hour. To start recording, and I'm going to demo the process of using optical character recognition to transform a document or a flyer into an editable transcript that you can import into NVivo. It's a really quite simple process. I will show you. First of all, we need to look at the internet to find a, oops, extra sounds there. We'll get to the internet to find some good images to display for this, and Google search does fine. You can just imagine, right, what a flyer might look like by looking at Google Images, and say something. You want to make sure that that you have kind of a close-up and that it's clear. And if there's a lot of graphics and there's a lot of different columns and things like that, it's not going to come out great. But let's try this corporate flyer here. This one looks reasonable enough. There's a couple of columns, but it's not overly busy. And so, things like this probably will work. We'll see how this comes up. So if you have a document that has a lot going on, that's really busy, it probably will not transcribe well. If you're taking a picture from far away, if you're not, doing a sort of a close-up on the document itself, it probably won't work. Also, if you get too close, it probably won't work. So you want it to look kind of like this, where you just got it all in the frame, and the frame is around all of the corners. In fact, we might, try this one as well. And if there's a lot of background images, it's not going to transcribe well either. Oops, I didn't do that right. Save image. And it's also the case if you are using your phone to take the picture. If your hand is wobbly and your picture is kind of blurry, that it's not going to transcribe that well either. But now I have a couple of different images just to kind of display what you might see if you were sort of using your phone or a scanner to make an image of flyers or other documents that were given to you by your group. And largely because of the stability issue, that it's really hard to keep your hand stable and using your phone, it's better to use a scanner. scanner, you have the document stable on the glass, and it's never unstable. And so it's always preferred if you can scan things. Sometimes it's just not feasible, or it's just a lot harder to scan it, and your phone will have to work. There are, if you get serious about it, there are stands basically where you set up your phone to stabilize it, and then you just set your flyers and things right underneath it. You could probably make some makeshift type of stand. But anyway, once you have all of your pictures probably on your phone or on some online cloud storage, then you can go to the media editor site, mediaeditor.tk. And this is a site we've used before to manipulate interview files and make other changes to audio files. And I think I introduced you to the idea of OCR before, and I want to show you how that would work with your own flyers. So you come to this site and you click Choose Files, and we will first, let me try the first flyer that I copied. And I'm just going to choose that, and I'm going to add my email in here, and then I'm going to click Extract Text. And so you'll see here it says processing has started, an email will be sent to you when the file is ready. It won't take long. I'm going to go ahead and upload the second one. Add my email and click Extract Text. And usually by the time I come over here, it will be there already. We'll see. All right, so yeah, the first one's here already. Whoops, I clicked on the wrong one. First one's here already. They're both here already. Okay, not bad. We are a creative business planner and marketing agency. About us. I think that was that in the original? I think it was. This was a fake. This lorem ipsum is a very common thing. So the original, I believe, had that in there, even though I didn't notice it before. So it looks pretty good. Let's look at the second one. It had a lot of background noise. It was a little blurry in some ways. And so you can see that, right? There's a lot of mistakes here. Because there was a lot of things going on in the background there, it did not do well at transcribing that automatically. Now you can imagine also something that these aren't just like flyers, but that you have sort of documents that you have maybe an advert, maybe a more specific types of advertisement poster, right? Something like this. Maybe you even have something that has quite a bit of language on it, like this particular one. And I'm going to save this as an image, and we'll try it really quickly. We'll see what it looks like. But you get the idea of what can be done here. It's not perfect, obviously, and a lot of it depends on the source file. And you can, if you just Google free OCR, you'll see there are several other tools out there. You don't have to use the one that I built, that I'm using now. There's a couple of different ones out there. That most of them probably use the same technology that I use. I don't know, but there aren't that many choices really of technology out there. So unless people are writing their own software, which is not very likely, they're probably using very similar technology. And so if you have a an image, a flyer, or an advertisement, or any type of document that's a hard copy of a document that you need to turn into an editable document that you can actually edit within NVivo and put into your transcripts, then this is the way to go, right? You can see here, this last one was, I think, perfect. You can see get fit, enter more information about your gym in this area, first month free, add more information, right? This looks, almost perfect. So, you might have different luck with it than me, but when I have a flyer or a document, a hard copy document that that I want to import into NVivo and analyze, then I'm going to use OCR. I'm going to use this technology to transform them into Word files. I'm not going to type them up by hand. So this is the way to do it, and I hope that's clear. Let me know if you have any questions.